Hi and welcome to this demonstration video of how to get started with your new Joblogic system. You're probably going to want to get started and log in your first job into the system. We can generate a job in a variety of ways in Joblogic. The quickest and easiest way is to do it through the job screen here. If we click on Log Job, we're met with the initial job card. So the first thing we want to do is create our first customer into the software. We can do this by clicking on the plus button. Joblogic integrates with Google Places, so by typing in a postcode or an address and even a company name into this field here, it's going to automatically populate the address fields for us. I can group customers into types. Again, this is a library field. We've got a plus button here so we can add on the fly. As soon as we click save, you can see that Joblogic has created a site for us. The next mandatory field that we need to complete is a job type. This is the type of works that you're going to be doing, such as a call out, installation, etc. It's going to allow you to group and report on the types of work that you do as a company. I can create a new job type. If I start typing, it's going to ask me to add to the library. So quick and easily add new entries as I'm going through the system. If I want to, I can add a job category. This is like a subtype of work, again for reporting purposes. I can also add a priority. Again, I can add to the library here and create an emergency response. The system's recorded the date log, can change this date if this has been retrospectively added. We can add an appointment date to assist with scheduling as to when the customer requires this work to be done. If we've been given an order number, we can add the order number into the field here. This is going to follow all the way through then into the invoice. I can quickly get this job deployed and out to an engineer by selecting an engineer from our library, a date and time that we want him to visit, and finally a description of works. We can enter as much or as little information at this point, and we can come back and add further detail at a later time. To deploy this out to the mobile app, I can click on Deploy to Mobile. As soon as I click Save, this is going to send and deploy the job straight down to the engineer. Once the job has been logged into the system, you can see here there's a number of additional tabs where we can add further information as required. The job detail is the information we've just added into the system, which we can edit by clicking on the Edit button here. You can also see the visit, so this is the engineer's visit that we've created, and by adding the engineer and deploying it down to mobile. The cost tab here, this is the information that's going to come back from the mobile, so on the app we're going to record things like the amount of time spent on site, any travel time, materials used, expenses, etc. We could also add an asset to this job or this site. An asset is a piece of equipment that you're going to be regularly servicing. The system allows assets to be stored against the site and added to both planned maintenance jobs and also reactive jobs to build asset histories. We can also add tasks to the job. So these are individual tasks that you want the engineer to perform as part of the job, and this is a task library that you can create and select and pick from as required. We also have the notes fields. Now these are available at all levels in the system. Here we're looking at just job notes, which we split into public and private. So public is able to be shown on the mobile, whereas private is for more in-house communication. Public notes can also show on any job sheets and paperwork. If we enter a job note into here, you'll see the system also user time and date stamps, so we can see who said what and when. We can also add attachments to the jobs. So this is the ability for us to send anything outside Joblogic down to the engineer. It could be an image, it could be a site map, it could be a schematic. Attachments also work both ways at job level, so the engineers can attach images and send them back into Joblogic as well. Again, we split these down to public and private. The invoices, these are what we're going to raise following completion of the job. We can raise multiple invoices through Joblogic, and then that information is batched into your accounts package. Our contacts module allows you to create and assign contacts, multiple contacts to customers, to sites and to jobs. With our customer notification module, you can also then customize depending on certain event triggers that happen during the life cycle of the job. In this instance, Karen wants to receive notification when a job has been completed and a job has been invoiced. Karen also wants to know when an engineer is on his way. You can customize the notification emails that go out to the clients, and there's also a portal link that is sent with that email, which allows the contact to see real-time status updates within the job. Finally, we have a status audit trail, so you can see here the different status changes and the time and date stamps when those have occurred. Finally, Joblogic links and integrates with Google Maps. This means that the engineer will receive a hyperlink as part of the job on the mobile, which will give him the ability to click and open Google Maps and get directions, so we can use that as a sat nav. We can use a scheduler to keep updated with job status from the engineer. This is the diary system within Joblogic. There are a variety of different views available, depending on the information that you wish to see. I'm going to first just show business hours. So we can see that the job that we've booked in today. I can click on that job card and I can view the job in a bit more detail. I can also expand the job if I believe that it's going to take more of the engineer's time. I can see from the question mark against the job that the engineer is still yet to accept. The icon will change as certain events take place and status changes are applied within the mobile app, so that in the back office we can get a constant live update as to the status of the job. Not only can we use the scheduler to view and schedule our engineers, we can also create jobs directly from the diary. To do that, we can filter our engineers. You can see the available engineers in here. You can also add engineers directly from the diary as well. To add a new job, if I find a free time slot with an engineer, by selecting the available time slots, I can then be presented with a job card. In the same way that we created the job through the log job screen, we can do the same directly through the diary here. The idea of logging a job through the scheduler is to allow you to quickly get an appointment and a job generated, and I can deploy that straight to the engineer's mobile. Again, we can see the green question mark, which is alerting us to the fact that the engineer has yet to accept the job. Now the jobs have been deployed, we can now log into the engineer's app to view and complete the jobs. By clicking on the visits, you can see in our visit list here we have 2 outstanding jobs. If we click on the first, we can see some more information about the job. We include the job number for the engineer, also the appointment date and time. The hyperlink is our link to Google Maps. The engineer can click on this and, as say, get directions. And finally, the job description. The first thing we want the engineers to do is to accept the job. This is time and date stamped and is going to provide an update in the back office to let us know that the engineer has seen this job. Once he's ready to go to the job, we would then ask the engineer to click on the travel button. This is going to trigger a number of things in Joblogic. Firstly, if you're using customer notification and a contact has requested a notification when the engineer is travelling, this is going to send them an email straight out to let them know the engineer is on his way. It also acts as part of the engineer's timesheet, as well as triggering the travel element of the job costing. Even if you don't charge for travel, it's still a cost to you on the job. So now the engineer is travelling, we just put a little bit of time onto that job. Scroll down and show you some additional information that can be sent across as part of the job. There are a number of libraries detailed here. We have a job summary, which goes into more detail about the job itself, things like any job notes we would have added. You can also see, if there's any phone numbers associated with the contact, as well as clicking on the job number and again, getting further information, if any job attachments, etc. We can also see some information about the site that we're going to. As this is a new site, there's not too much information showing now. Things that we can add at this point though, we could add some site notes when we arrive. Going forward, you'll also be able to see a full site asset list once this is built, as well as a job history. So every time an engineer goes to site, he'll be able to see a full list of any other jobs completed at this site. And in that, it also includes things like any job sheets that have been created, any call slips, and also any forms or mobile forms that have been completed as part of the job. You'll see here the quote history. Please bear in mind we don't send any costing information down to the mobile, so things like actual quote values, invoice values, etc. are not visible on the mobile app. We can though store site attachments which can be very useful for engineers, things like where equipment's located, site diagrams, etc. Okay, so when the engineer arrives on site, he will click the on-site button. That's going to complete the travel element of the time and now start the labour. Again, time and date stamped. We can ask the engineer to enter mileage if required. This will also form part of your job costing. So once the engineer is on site, a number of different busy action buttons are now available to us. The engineer can record if he's incurred a parking charge. He can log this into the system, as well as taking a photograph and adding that as an attachment. He can update the site notes. This will notify all other engineers going to site of any parking restrictions or access issues. If there are any tasks that have been associated with this job that the engineer needs to complete, you'll be able to click on there and view them in here. The same if you'd logged any assets. We do allow for the engineers to log assets themselves, so as you can see we've not currently got any assets assigned to this site. The engineer can add a new asset by clicking on the green plus button. He can add description, if there's a serial number we can also record it here, as well as any installation and warranty dates. This is really useful for if an engineer is actually installing a new piece of kit. You can log the installation dates as well as the forwarding warranty. The notes field here is for any notes specific to the asset. You can also use this field to add links to Google Drive or Dropbox or manual. By clicking save, we're now adding this asset to the site. To add it onto the job, click the smaller add button here. It now assigns the asset to the job. If we open up the asset, you can see the information that we've previously logged. If we were servicing this asset, we can now come into here and click complete and record the condition of the asset. We can customize these if required. Back in our visit actions, we can start recording any parts that we've used on the job. The parts library on the mobile is mirroring the parts library that you create in the back office. You can also, if you wish, allow your engineers to add parts into that library as well using this add button here. You can create a part, record a part number. If I've bought this from a merchant as an engineer, I can record any buying costs. We're also going to add this to our list of potential assets in the future. Okay. Once I've created the part, the system will then ask me if I've used the part. If it's used, it's going to go onto the job costing. If it's required, it's going to flag to the back office that a part needs ordering and there's a revisit required. We can keep adding as many parts to the job as necessary. Once complete, we can come back to the visit actions. The attachments button here allows us to take any photographs on site, so any damage that we need to record. There are no limits on the amount of photos that can be taken and added to the job. All we need to do is take picture and add as attachment. Our visit notes. These are the engineer job notes. He can update the back office as to what he has done whilst on site. I can also mark any notes as private, which will go into the private notes section within the job. This will make sure that they don't actually show on any of the job sheets or paperwork. The engineer can add as many notes into this section as required. The engineer can also take advantage of the speech-to-text facility, where you can click on the microphone and dictate any notes directly into the software. This saves him a lot of time, as well as any autocorrect that needs to occur. Any job notes that the engineer adds can be edited by the back office. Joblogic includes a number of industry standard forms as part of our mobile form library. On setup, you can select the forms that are relevant to you as an industry and as a company. These will then show in the mobile forms list here for your engineers to make use of. The forms are completed on the mobile and will come back to the back office as a generated PDF document. Now the engineer has completed his job, he has a couple of options. The first is to leave site. If he's on a 3-day, 2-day installation and needs to come back tomorrow, by clicking leave site, this will ensure that the engineer's timesheet is kept accurate. If the job is complete and he's done everything that he needs to do on this visit, he can click on the complete button and the system will then go through a short completion routine. The software has been set up so it's prompting the engineer that he hasn't added any photographs in this instance. If needs be, if he's forgotten, he can then add them at this point. Is the issue resolved, yes or no? If there are any parts marked as required against this job, it would automatically default to no, because the system will know that a revisit is required. There are other reasons you might want to mark the issue resolved as no, and the engineer can then select from the list of revisit reasons. If the issue has been resolved, we'll click on yes. We can then add any additional recommendations, so if anything else needs replacing, any further works are required, etc., we can log that in here to show on the job sheet and to the customer. The visit notes will also be summarised here for the engineer. Again, if he's forgotten to add any notes at this point, he can add some further notes in this field. Times and parts associated with the job are listed here. The engineer may choose to show this to the customer if required. And also the job status and time when the job is going to be marked as completed. Once the customer is happy with this, we can then capture a signature. This does not need to be mandatory. And we also ask the engineer to sign off on the job as well. At that point, all the information is now going to come back to the back office. The engineer can go back to his list of jobs, click on the next one and click travel. We can now see in the back office that our job has been completed. That's completed icon here. So we now want to go and view the job and create the invoice. Go to the all jobs list. This will show us all our jobs which we can filter down using the criteria above. You can see here that the job is complete, the visit is complete. So if I go into and click on the job number, the system's all hyperlinked, so it's nice and easy to navigate around. I can view the job card. You can see already the costs that have come back from mobile. So at the moment we're minus 502 because of the costs that have been incurred and we're yet to invoice. We could also click on attachments. We can view any attachments that have been generated by the mobile. So we can see here there's been a call slip that's been generated, which we can just open up there like so. And when you set your system up, you'll be able to install things like your company logo as well as all your company information. The cost screen will list out the costs incurred as part of the job. It's at this point that you can change and edit and add any of the costs that have come back from mobile. Because we've yet to set up things like costs and sell rates within the software, you can see that at the moment everything's coming back as zero cost. We can edit any of that detail by setting a cost per hour and either an uplift against that cost or a fixed sell figure. Joblogic allows for multiple selling rates to be configured in the software, as well as recording costs against engineers, as well as standard company cost per hour. We can do the same with travel, as well as mileage and materials. We can now see a running total with the total cost and estimated sell, and therefore our profit. At this point, if we're happy with the cost, we can go to invoice. Create an invoice by clicking on Add Invoice button. This is now a draft invoice. At this point, while it's still in draft, we can again edit and add any costs as required. So I can remove any item lines I don't want showing on the invoice. I could also add an item line as well at this point. We can set up headers and footers within the software, different payment terms. Again, that's a library that you can create in the back office. Once you're happy with the totals on the invoice, at this point we can click Approve, which will give it an invoice number, and fix the invoice in the system. We can email out this invoice direct to the client by clicking on the email button here. The options are detailed or totals only. The email is defaulted to the only email address associated with the job, customer or site. At this point we could also just free type and add any additional email addresses in. Click Send, and that's going to send the invoice out as a PDF document to the client. Joblogic integrates with a number of accounts packages. At the point of creating an invoice, the information is then held in the Reports and Exports module, ready for transference into your account system. Hopefully it's given you a good overview of how Joblogic works from logging a job through to invoicing. To get you up and running with the software, we've got some easy setup sections located on the left menu, including the Manage Company, where you can set up some system defaults, such as company registration numbers. You can also in here set up things like your basic cost rates, as well as adding your logo, payment details, payment terms, etc. The company forms, which you want to select for mobile, are also housed in here, where you can select the ones that are applicable to you as a company. The customer notifications, which will automatically send out those emails on status triggers to your clients, can be set up within the notifications section here. If you're wanting to integrate with your account system, if you set up your financial details within here, such as tax rates and nominal codes, this will assist in how the information is passed to your accounts package. We also have library options for creating things like selling rates, along with tasks, parts libraries, etc. Additional users and engineers can be added, by inviting back office and inviting engineer. We can also, in the all engineer section there, configure things like branches they work from, as well as their cost rates per hour. If you need any further help and assistance, please use the help section here. We have a variety of tools to assist you, things like live chat. We can also offer more in-depth demonstrations for you, as well as the help portal and telephone and contact details. Thanks for your time.